Hi and welcome to this episode, the 3 buckets of value. As you've seen, when somebody is building a case to financially justify spend on any type of business investment, they will want to know what returns they are going to get. And Mike has already shown you in a previous episode 5 things that you can do to improve the financial picture for your customer. But there's one of these 5 that really will help increase your chances of success and lies totally within your control, and that's increasing the value. To make your case for investment as strong as possible, you have to include as much value as possible, where the value is measured in the terms of money. So when selling any solution, your job as a salesperson is to help customers identify all the value they could potentially realize from the purchase of your solution. And when selling unified communications, one of the most obvious areas of value, and hence the most obvious area of return for the customer, is in the form of cost savings. Savings that come from things like reduced or simplified moves, adds and changes, reduced costs of cabling because there's just now a single cable to the desk to support both voice and data. Maybe reduced call charges by making internal calls across your IP WAN, toll bypass. Reduced maintenance and support costs perhaps that come from running a single infrastructure. Those sorts of things, and there's lots of others, many of which are outlined in the cheat sheet that's associated with this episode. But that's only one area, and quite often the only area that people look at to identify business value. So imagine you've got a hopper, right? And into it you're going to pour the value that will create the returns for the customer that are needed to build a strong business case. And one of the buckets used to fill this hopper is called the cost savings bucket. But there are 2 other buckets we can use, which will increase the value and hence the returns for our proposition. The second bucket I want you to use is the productivity bucket. This is where the deployment of a unified communication solution, and in particular the applications that can be deployed, actually start to have a positive impact on the productivity of the users. And this might be the users within the communications and IT team who become more productive because they can serve the users better, or deploy applications faster, or maybe just reduces their own travel time when managing remote sites, for example. But there is also the productivity benefits that the end users will realize through things like improvements in team collaboration, where conferencing perhaps that could bring a project to conclusion faster. Remote or home working is another example, or extension mobility where personnel are more contactable. And again, so the list goes on. So we have to make sure we understand, and more importantly help the customer understand, how these things will impact the business. But there is a third bucket of returns that we can also look at, which covers other business benefits. But what you'll find is that some of these things initially seem quite intangible, which you'll see in a minute, but they have to be made tangible in order to measure them and include them in your business case. So some of these we often refer to as tangible intangibles. So what kind of things will go in our third bucket? Well, a couple of examples of the more tangible benefits are how a unified communication solution will maybe give a faster time to market, which would increase the profitability of a new product. Maybe the quicker turnaround of inventory, which would reduce the amount of money tied up in stock and hence improve the cash flow of the business. But remember, we have to put a metric against these, which can ultimately be measured in pounds or dollars. So if you think about faster time to market, which might be measured in months, you need to understand what that extra time would equate to in sales, whether that's new orders or incremental revenues per existing customer, whatever it might be. But there will be a way that the business measures that value, and your job is to help them identify it. Now, the less tangible benefits might be things like improved customer satisfaction or improved employee morale. And although something like employee morale is quite a soft issue, you will find that it can be made tangible when you think through the impact on the business. So for example, if a dissatisfied employee is less productive, and you know what the average revenue per employee actually is for the business, you would be able to calculate what a percentage drop in productivity because of job dissatisfaction actually equates to in money. And what if a dissatisfied employee was to actually leave the business? Well, again, this would lead to incremental costs for the business, which are tangible, on things like recruitment of somebody new and training to bring them up to the desired level of competency. There's even the lost opportunity during this less productive time that can actually be measured. So that's our job, joining the dots between a feature of our solution and what it will actually do for the business, and then how that result will be measured, as I said, ultimately in the form of money, dollars, pounds, whatever currency. And if you can do this, addressing all three buckets of value, what you'll find is that your financial justification becomes extremely strong. So let me wrap this up and leave you with two thoughts. Firstly, don't assume that the customer will do this themselves. They don't understand the technology like you and won't necessarily identify all the value. Secondly, you need to understand their business to be able to do this. It takes a consultative selling approach. In fact, that's why this type of selling is often called value-based selling. So go and watch the Serious Selling program to help you do this. And if you already have, go back and watch episodes like The Power of Diagnosis or The Power of Metrics or The Domino Effect, which shows how one improvement in the business can impact another and the knock-on effect that impacts another, which could create multiple areas of return and inclusion in your financial justification. So I'll now say goodbye, and in closing, I'm going to suggest that for your next customer meeting, at the top of your notes, you draw 3 little buckets to remind you to explore all 3 buckets of value. Goodbye.